Coming up next is a game that might raise some eyebrows. I'm someone who loves trying new games. It's definitely something that's really attracted me to video game collecting in general. I've really never been someone who just buys games. I've always been pretty meticulous about playing games and making sure I get to all of them. And for this video, I want to go over games that for whatever reason I held off on playing. And then when I finally went and played them, I was like, I'm kind of a fool for doing that. There are tons of games I haven't played, either just because I haven't heard of them and don't know they exist, or they don't really seem like my thing at all. But these games specifically are games that I kind of knew I would like and just never really played them. I'd say we just get right into it, starting with a pretty good example, which is Kirby. I don't say any specific game because this really is just a series. I have Crystal Shards here, which is probably my favorite Kirby game. So when I was a kid, platformers were not my thing because they were childish. When I say when I was a kid, I mean like literally like 11 or 12. And I was like, I'm too mature for platformers, although I did play Rayman and Super Meat Boy, but I guess Super Meat Boy's edgy because there's like blood and stuff, and so much has happened to Rayman. But back on topic, obviously Kirby, Mario, stuff like that fell into the category of like baby stuff. Mario might still be a little bit kind of like baby stuff, I think maybe, but Kirby for some reason isn't, even though it's like easier than Mario and there's like less spiky mean things. I don't know, there's a lot of existential horror in Kirby. My point that I'm making here is that up until I started game collecting, I had never played Kirby. It's something I like intentionally did not play my whole life. I'm saying Kirby specifically because I was a Nintendo kid, so it's not like I wasn't playing Crash because it was a platformer. I wasn't playing Crash or Little Big Planet because I didn't have Sony stuff. But Kirby I had to intentionally go out of my way to avoid. Upon finally giving it a chance when I started collecting games and just came back at it with a fresh perspective that didn't rule out platformers as baby stuff, I found one of my favorite series ever. I think the Kirby games, pretty much every single one I've played, are just such a joy to go through. They don't really challenge you, which, sometimes I do like a challenge, but to be honest with video games, most of the time I don't. And it is nice to just explore and use all of Kirby's different abilities. I would have never played Kirby if I didn't start video game collecting. So it's just really cool that I did come across it, and I'm so glad I did because, I'm a huge Kirby fan. Next up is a bit more of a recent discovery, and that is Donkey Kong Country 2. I have had Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2 on the SNES for a while now. I mean, in terms of my collecting history, like probably 2 years. I played a bit of the first Donkey Kong Country, and I liked it, but it's just so hard. I forget if that's like a widely held belief, but I found it very hard and very difficult. And it's just hard and very difficult for me to get into a game when I feel like I can't really advance at all, or it's just super frustrating to advance. But Donkey Kong Country 2, I think, is much more approachable. Admittedly, I haven't beat this game, so I'm sure it gets harder, but it just is much more approachable. And the controls in Donkey Kong Country feel so nice. The level designs are really cool, and it's nice that there are little paths and a bunch of fun things to discover. And the overall vibe of Donkey Kong is just so charming and silly and whimsical and very difficult. I had kind of crossed out Donkey Kong Country as one of those games I just couldn't really enjoy, even if it was good, because it was too, unforgiving for me, and it would be hard to advance. And in this game, it didn't feel like that, and it feels like it is fun to advance. And I haven't beat it yet, but that's not because, I got stuck or something. I'm playing a bunch of stuff. Obviously, for the SNES, this game is, a legend for what it did visually. And, if you haven't played it, because the first one was too hard, try to. It's a lot more approachable in my opinion. Coming up next is a game that might raise some eyebrows. It's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but I didn't title this Retro Games I've Slept On, or whatever I end up changing it to, because I need to game the algorithm. I need to figure it all out. I think it's pretty safe to say Mario Kart 8 is a classic game at this point. I mean, it's over 10 years old, even though, it's still the newest Mario Kart, which is wild. And for most of my life, I was like, I don't like Mario Kart. I like Forza. I like Need for Speed, games with real physics, where you can go in slow motion and do an epic drift and then nitrous boost out of it. And then, I just thought Mario Kart in general was not very fun. It didn't feel like what I wanted racing games to feel like. It didn't really feel like I was in control of the vehicle in the way that I wanted to be, and it wasn't very satisfying. In college, this is one of the games that everyone just played at every social gathering, and through that, I started to get into it, and I eventually bought it for myself and played it more. I still don't think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is necessarily my favorite racing game ever, but it is very fun, and I do enjoy playing it, especially with other people. It is a very good multiplayer game, and probably My number 1 or 2 multiplayer game, maybe only behind like Smash Bros or something. But also, to be fair, Mario Kart Wii was the Mario Kart game that was like in the zeitgeist when I was a kid. And upon returning to that modern day, I still don't really like it. I think the controls are kind of weird and they just don't feel right, especially if you're using motion control. It just feels really funky. And yeah, I'm not into Mario Kart Wii at all. But I do like Mario Kart 8, and I like some of the other Mario Karts I've played since. Alright, next up, and this actually is stretching the title a little bit. I don't know quite if this game is classic, but it is a game I slept on, and that is Taz in Escape from Mars. From what I understand, Taz actually has a pretty good track record with video games. In general, there's like Taz Most Wanted, which is definitely a game I have been looking for. And I think there's another one, another 16-bit Taz game that's also pretty well liked, although I'm pretty sure people say this one's better. Marv the Martian is probably my favorite Looney Tunes character, not that I know a ton about them. Don't quiz me on my knowledge, I just like his hat. And he's kind of a nerd, I think. Yeah, it's cool that he makes an appearance in this game. I think the settings in this game are super fun. The animation looks great, like it's more on par with like the Disney platformers at the time than it is with other like licensed games at the time. It's definitely like a league above what you'd expect. And then just the whole concept is super fun and super fitting for the character, where you advance through these stages by just like going into a whirlwind and smashing everything around you. And just even if you're like not advancing in the game or something, it is still just satisfying to like use your tornado spin move and like destroy stuff. And I remember just the first time I really made like significant headway in this game, I just genuinely was like having fun like smashing through the level and going through stuff. And then all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was at the end of the level, and I was like, yeah, no, it feels really fun to progress in this game, and you wouldn't expect it. Obviously, the reason I was not in a huge rush to play this game is because it's a licensed Looney Tunes game on the Sega Genesis. But you know, to those in the know, that phrase actually is a sign of quality and not a sign against it. Next up is Virtua Racing, which is on the much maligned Sega 32X, which obviously is a console everyone is like, it's probably not worth caring about. It wasn't worth it at the time. It probably isn't worth it now either. But I picked it up one random fateful day off a random Facebook Marketplace sale. I don't even remember if I like knew what it was at the time. Like I got the 32X before I had like a PS3 or something, practically. It might have been a little after that. But it was like, yeah, it was very early on in my collecting journey. And for a long time, I didn't do much with it. I kind of looked into it and I was like, oh yeah, there's some cool looking games on here. They're all like $200, but there's some cool ones. And then at some point, I became aware of Virtua Racing, just in general, like the series. And I was like, yeah, that's like a legendary Sega arcade racing game. I definitely want to play that in some form. So I started looking out for it. And I saw that there was a 32X version of it. And it's so fun watching the 32X do anything in 3D. Like, it feels like magic. You don't really think about it when your PS5 is displaying like a 3D image, but when the 32X is, I feel like I can see it like thinking. It's like, I don't know, it's just so cool and charming watching this thing do 3D. And then this is a genuinely fun racing game from, I mean, obviously it's on a 32-bit system, technically, kind of, I think, but it's from kind of the 16-bit generation also. And it's awesome seeing those early racing games and those early attempts at 3D and seeing them get it so right in this version that I think is just a super great version of this game. They got the physics really right. As I said before, the visuals are just so my thing. I love the chunky polygon race cars. That's like, chunky polygon race cars, like one of the best phrases anyone could say, in my opinion. That's just so awesome. And yeah, I don't know, if you have slept on a 32X, you have to go out and buy one. It's totally worth it. And buy Virtua Racing. And you'll be like, yeah, this was worth the $200 in total that this costed me and more if I didn't have a Genesis yet. Yeah, Virtua Racing. All right, next up is an important one because it's one I have a feeling you might have slept on too. And it's Wonder Boy and Monsterland, but really the whole Wonder Boy series. It's just such a blast, and I feel like it's really overlooked, and it doesn't help that it's like confusing. There's like Monster Boy and Wonder Boy, and I think Adventure Island is also somehow related to these games, and it's like, you know, they're mainly on like the Master System, which who's playing that. But there are a bunch of Wonder Boy and like Monster Boy collections and remakes and reimaginings that have come out recently that I think are all really worth playing. And it's just a super fun and colorful action platformer with like some Metroidvania-light or even like RPG-light elements in it, where you're like buying equipment that lets you do different things or just gives you more defense or more attack or something. And you're just advancing through these levels that are pretty straightforward platformer levels in a lot of ways, but it is fun getting the enemies, picking up coins, going to the shops, buying new armor, trying to fight the boss. It's just, you know, it's like, I've said this before, Wonder Boy is like a video game that would be in a movie as like a fake video game someone's playing. That's this game. It does all the video game things, and it does them very well. And because the series is just kind of confusing, like genealogically, I guess. I don't know. That was definitely not the best word, but I'm gonna keep it. Yeah, I overlooked this game without even really knowing that there was just this legendary, like, platformer series that I was overlooking. And upon getting my Master System and playing this game, just instantly it clicked. And I was like, yeah, this this is what retro games are all about. This is sick. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I could definitely do a part 2 to this. Let me know if you'd want that. Let me know what some games you've overlooked are. Join our Patreon. We do a bunch of extra content there. Like and subscribe, and have a good day.